Welcome to the Creality CR Scan Lizard user guide video series. In this video, I'll cover how to do 3D scanning in the hand scan mode, which is now referred to as Easy Scan in the latest version of the CR Studio software. Check the timestamps in the description of this video to jump to sections that might interest you. If you're enjoying the content so far, then consider supporting me by buying me a coffee through my support page, link found in the description. Otherwise, just subscribe and like the video to help my channel grow. As always, all links and information found in the description of the video, so check that out for details. Before we begin, you should be set up correctly for hand scanning mode. If you haven't already watched the previous videos specifically on this topic, then I suggest going back and watching that first and then coming back to view this video. Another quick note that the software version I'm using currently for Windows is version 2.5.4. So enough chat, let's get into it. Connect the scanner up to the computer so that it is powered on and ready to go. Then open the CR Studio software. Also make sure that the ambient light in your room is not too bright. Close any blinds to stop harsh outside light and turn off any overhead lights if they are too bright. You can do handheld scanning or easy scanning in two ways. The first is by simply holding the scanner and moving around the target object. The second is by hand scanning in conjunction with using the rotating turntable. This second method can be good when working with a small object in a tighter space, where you can't move around the target object so easily. Instead, you can just move the scanner up and down while the table rotates the object for you. Deciding which way is better will depend on the situation you're in and your own experience with using the scanner. For the majority of this demonstration, I'll focus on using it without the turntable, and then at the end of the video, I'll cover using the turntable as well. Place your target object on a clear workspace, and as a tip, you can use the tripod as a handle. With the CR Studio software open, go to the Easy Scan tab, and once ready, click on the Scan button. I like to start with a brightness of either 2 or 3 and a smoothness of 5, but you can adjust these details as you need. So when you're ready, click on Scan. Slowly move around the target object, capturing as much detail as you can from that angle. It's not about capturing every detail you can, just enough detail from that angle, as when we go into the processing, we'll converge all the layers together to create our complete model. Once you're finished with the scan, click on the Stop button. Rotate the object around so we can get it from a different angle, and then click on the Append button. Wait for the camera to start, and once it's ready, again click on Scan. Once again, just slowly moving around the target object, trying to capture all the detail you can. And then once you think you have it all, just click on Stop. Don't forget to save your name, so push Ctrl S to save and then give it a name. I'll fast forward through the rest of the scanning process for this object, but I recommend you get at least 3 to 6 scans of an object, rotating it around, flipping it upside down, to the side, etc. to get all the surface areas that you can cover. You can also adjust the brightness lower to get in closer and try and capture more details, and then adjust it higher to move back a bit and cover more area. If you make changes to these settings and the scan doesn't come out the way you want to, then simply trash the scan layer and do another one. Also, don't worry about how rough it looks at this stage. This step is messy and doesn't represent the final outcome. I think we now have enough detail captured for this demonstration. Our next step is the cleanup and alignment of the mesh data. The first thing we need to do is clean up our mesh a bit. Start by hiding all the scan layers apart from the first layer. You can do this by clicking on the eye visibility icon and making sure the layer we are working on is the last one selected. As you can see, there's a bit of cleanup that needs to be done. By holding the Control button and left mouse button, you can drag around windows to select areas. If you pick 3 areas in a triangle formation like this, and then right click and go Selection Plane, you can see it will fill in the detail in between. And there is some of the mesh that we want to keep, so we can just rotate the view to kind of get a side profile, and this time holding Alt and left mouse button, dragging over some of this mesh. Don't need to keep all of it, just trying to keep as much as we can. And then just hitting delete on the keyboard. There are also some final pieces here that you can just circle around and delete these bits out as well. Just remember, you don't need to get every bit, but just as much as you can will help the processing stage along a bit easier. Repeat this process for the remaining layers. So we'll hide our first layer, enable our second layer, and do the same thing. I'll fast forward this process just to speed things up a bit. Once finished with the cleanup, save your work and bring all the layers back into visibility. We now need to align all the layers, so we'll try the auto alignment first. Making sure all our layers are selected, click on Align. Give it some time so it can complete the aligning process. Let's have a look at our results. So in this case it looks okay. I don't think this is going to give us the best results, but we'll see how we go. Let's say that one layer wasn't completely aligned. If I hide all my other layers, leaving just this final layer, and then I'm going to move it out of the way by enabling the transform operator and holding Alt middle mouse button to move out of the side, turning off my transform operator, and then turning back on my base layer, which is going to be my first scan. I'm also going to rotate it just a little bit so it's not completely aligned. So let's say it's in this position. So if we needed to manually align this, what we do is we go back to our Align tab and we go to Manual. I'm going to use HandScan 1 as our base layer, so everything will align to this, and HandScan 8 is what we're trying to align it back into position. Making sure HandScan 8 is selected, we click on the plus icon and this will give us 3 reference lines to work from. And the idea is that we pick 3 areas that correspond on both meshes, and then the software will try and align those back into position. So I like to try and use a triangle formation, so I might pick something on the front, on the base, and then on the tail. Something that corresponds on both sides so that it can match up. So in this case, we're going to make sure our first reference line is selected, and a good point I think is going to be this hoof. So by right clicking, I'm going to drop a point here and another right click about here. It doesn't need to be 100%, but close enough. Our second reference, I'm going to do something near the tail. So right click about here and here. And then our final reference line, the third one, let's do something up the top higher. So probably on the forehead and on the forehead. And then we can click on Align. And you can see that's done a much better job. If you just toggle the visibility, you can kind of get an idea of if things are lining up correctly. So you can just go through each layer and you can see if anything's out of place. I'd say this one is probably out of line. It seems a few of these are not quite right, so I don't think the results from the processing will be that great. I could spend some time and align these manually, so I'm going to do that by fast forwarding through the rest of the video and doing this manual alignment process for the rest of the layers. With everything aligned, you can click on the process button and wait for it to complete. Click cancel for no or apply for yes. And so it looked like the scan actually came out pretty good, even though I had concerns it wasn't going to be so great. Except for we do have this one part that's sticking out, so I'll show you how to clean that up while we're here as well. The first thing you want to make sure is that you're in edit mode, which we are, and we're going to make a selection around this and then delete it. So we hold down our control key and just drag around this area, which will highlight it, and then push delete on the keyboard, and that will delete it. The problem that brings is that it's going to be a little hole there, and I just want to cut off just a little bit more as well. So again, holding down control, just dragging around here and delete. And so we can see we have a bit of a hole here now. You could export it and fix it up in something like Mesh Mixer, but you can also do it in the CR Studio. So if you go up to Edit and then Fill Holes, allow it to process, and it should fill in any holes like that. So that is one way you can clean up. In another case, if you had any sort of floaty bits around out here, what you can do is the same thing, go to Edit and then remove isolated items, and it will delete anything that's sort of like out here that shouldn't be there. And so that brings us to the end of our processing stage. You could now export this by going to File and then Export, and exporting it as an OBJ or an STL. The second way of using hand scanning is in conjunction with the turntable. With this method, you can capture more surface area while also only having to move up and down with minor left and right movements. I tend to prefer this method for smaller objects, as I find I get better detail and easier processing. So the process is essentially the same as before, apart from first placing and powering on the turntable, then following the previous steps for scanning, cleanup, alignment, and processing. So that brings us to the end of this video on how to scan using the easy scan mode or hand scanning mode. It takes a bit of practice, but this is probably my preferred method of 3D scanning with the CRScan Lizard. I find in most cases it just gives me that little bit of extra detail that I need, and it's also easier to work around the object compared to putting it on a table. In the next video, I'll show you how to use the color kit, which will allow you to capture both the model and its material and textures. If you found value in this video, then please consider supporting me by buying me a coffee through my support page. Otherwise, just subscribe and like the video to help my channel grow. As always, thanks for watching.